Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Dane. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today, we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 3, Part 3 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it will not serve as a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book. The utmost integrity and care are used in maintaining a safe, spoiler-free environment for all of our listeners.
Today's episode contains descriptions of violence and thus is not suitable for children. Bonus warning, those with thalassophobia should steer clear of this episode. All right, thalassophobia, that's a new one.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. I need to make a small correction. In last week's episode, we were speaking about Karsa and his fixation on Dalis, and that led into a couple other parts, and we were talking about the Teblor and wives. I made a pretty crazy statement that we couldn't think of any other wives among the Teblor other than Karsa's mother and father. One of our listeners, Holda, rightly pointed out the chief's wife from the Rathid village is obviously another example of a wife. So how quickly I forget, but there must be more. I'm still probably not remembering all of them, but thank you, Holda, for pointing that out to us.
Yeah, and I went back and listened to what I was talking about. I'm not even sure I was articulating very well what was in my mind. The track of the conversation was going to the premarital relations between Bairoth and Dalis and whether that was frowned upon by the tribes, because Karsa had conveyed it was allegedly not something that was looked upon in a favorable light. And so the track of my thoughts was thinking, we haven't really discussed much about the culture around marriage among the Teblor and what the rules are in relation to chastity prior to marriage or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that's ultimately what I was trying to discuss. But you're right. In the moment, neither one of us could think of any other wives. Apparently, Karsa's mom is the only one that was ever married to anybody.
Right. Very similar to the debate about female dwarves in The Lord of the Rings. Like, they just don't exist. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they must, but we've just never seen them. I don't know.
Well, thank you, Holda. We really appreciate you keeping us in check. We need this information, the brain trust of the people listening to this podcast to keep us straight.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Chapter 3, Part 3. There seemed to be no day and no night in this strange place. The sky shifted hue occasionally, as if jostled by high, remote winds. The streaks of pewter twisting and stretching, but there was no change otherwise. The air surrounding the raft remained motionless, damp and cool, and strangely thick. Did I put too much emphasis on
You put some emphasis on that. Thick.
Should I reread that?
I don't know. I like
Leave it.
Do another one if you want, but I like it. Can't help yourself. That's your normal lexicon. I don't think that you would say thick any other way.
Thickness. The flanges anchoring Karsa's chains were on the underside, holding him in place in a fashion identical to that in the slave trench at Silver Lake. The shackles themselves had been welded shut. Torvald's only recourse was to attempt to widen the holes in the planks where the chains went through, using an iron buckle to dig at the wood. Months of imprisonment had left him weakened, forcing frequent rests, and the buckle made a bloody mess of his hands. But once begun, the Daru would not relent. Karsa measured the passing of time by the rhythmic crunching and scraping sounds, noting how each pause to rest stretched longer, until Torvald's breathing told him the Daru had fallen into an exhausted sleep. Then the Teblor's only company was the sullen lap of water as it slipped back and forth across the platform. Do you think Torvald is going to all this trouble out of loyalty to Karsa, or do you think that he is analyzing the situation and thinking that his chances of survival are higher if he has Karsa to carry him along once he frees him?
I sort of wondered the same thing. I would have to imagine a bit of a mixed bag. He does seem to have some kind of connection with Karsa. There seems to be a level of discourse between the two of them that is not present in a lot of other people that Karsa encounters. So there might be some level of loyalty, but I think you're right. I'm pretty sure he realizes that his chances of survival go way up with Karsa being around. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Outwardly, Knuckles the gang/thief leader, you'd probably think that he's just doing this because his chances of survival would be higher. But his behaviors are showing that it seems to be more out of loyalty to me. I feel like he does feel some responsibility to help Karsa because they had that pact together. Maybe Karsa originally helping to get him out of those slave pits, even though it failed that first escape attempt. I think that might have cemented some type of bond between them.
Well, certainly when they were on the ship, Torvald did not have to take over control of trying to feed him, get the gag out of his mouth. Some of the other things that happen a little bit later in this section, he does seem to have a level of care, like you said.
Yeah. For all the wood positioned beneath it, the raft was still sinking, and Karsa knew that Torvald would not be able to free him in time. He had never before feared death, but now he knew that Urigal and the other faces in the rock would abandon his soul, would leave it to the hungry vengeance of those thousands of ghastly corpses. He knew his dream had revealed to him a fate that was real and inevitable and inexplicable. Who had set such horrid creatures upon him? Undead Teblor, undead Lowlander, warrior and child, an army of corpses, all chained to him. Why? He thought, lead us, war leader. Where? And now he would drown, here in this unknown place, far from his village. His claims to glory, his vows, all now mocking him, whispering a chorus of muted creaks, soft groans. Karsa said, Torvald. Torvald said, what? What is it? Karsa said, I hear new sounds. The Daru sat up, blinking crusted silt from his eyes. He looked around and exclaimed, Beru fend! Karsa asked, what do you see? Torvald's gaze was fixed on something beyond Karsa's head. He said, well, it seems there's currents here after all, though which of us has done the moving? Ships, Karsa, a score or more of them, all dead in the water, like us. Floating wrecks, no movement on them that I can see as yet. Looks like there was a battle, with plenty of sorcery being flung back and forth. Some indiscernible shift drew the ghostly flotilla into Karsa's view, an image on its side to his right. There were two distinct styles of craft. 20 or so were low and sleek, the wood stained mostly black, though where impacts and collisions and other damage had occurred, the cedar's natural red showed like gaping wounds. Many of these ships sat low in the water, a few with their decks awash. They were single-masted, square-sailed, the torn and shredded sails also black, shimmering in the pellucid light. The remaining 6 ships were larger, high-decked and 3-masted. They had been fashioned from a wood that was true black, not stained, as was evinced from the gashes and splintered planks marring the broad-bellied hulls. Not one of these latter ships sat level in the water. All leaned one way or the other, 2 of them at very steep angles. Torvald said, we should board a few. There will be tools, maybe even weapons. I could swim over there, that raider. It's not yet awash, and I see lots of wreckage. Karsa sensed Torvald's hesitation. He asked, what is wrong? Swim. Torvald said, I'm a little concerned, friend. I seem to have not much strength left, and these chains on me. Karsa said nothing for a moment, then he grunted and said, so be it. No more can be asked of you, Torvald Nam. Torvald slowly turned to regard Karsa and said, compassion, Karsa Orlong? Is it helplessness that has brought you to this? Karsa sighed and said, too many empty words from you, Lowlander. There are no gifts that come from being. A soft splash sounded, then sputtering and thrashing, the sputtering turning into laughter. Torvald, now alongside the raft, moved into Karsa's line of sight. He said, now we know why those ships are canted so. And the Teblor saw that Torvald was standing, the water lapping around his upper chest. Imagine being terrified of drowning for an unknown amount of time, only to find out you could stand on the bottom.
This reminds me of a scene in Robin Hood Men in Tights when Cariel's character, Robin Hood, of course, and Little John are having a little fight on the bridge, and then he gets knocked into the water, and the camera cuts down, and he's just in ankle-deep water, but having a complete panic attack. Also, when people have these near-death experiences, they seem to reveal things that are kind of buried deep. It sounds like one of those brief moments for Karsa when he actually fears death, something that we don't really get to see from him. I don't think we've ever heard him express something like that.
Yeah, and to further that point, he thought that his claims to glory and his vows were all now mocking him. This whole experience seems to have deeply affected him, and I look at it as like the humbling has begun.
Yeah.
But it's multiple things going on, though. Humbling to one side, and then you see the compassion that he's showing towards Torvald, but then separately, this fear of death is something he never had before.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he was shrieking when he was standing on that pile of bones, and now he's like, who cursed me with this? It's like, this is the implications of your behavior over your entire lifetime. You think you could just rampage around and do everything and there's not going to be any repercussions?
Yeah.
It surprises me that no one in their lore told him about these chains of souls that they can collect. The shamans didn't have any concept of that, and kind of makes me wonder if all Teblor have it or if it's only specific ones.
Only ones who maybe are air quotes blessed by the seven, maybe?
Yeah, that's another question. Is it a manifestation of what the seven are doing that Colm alluded to? So more questions than answers, I think, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
His reaction to it is very interesting.
Yeah.
Torvald continued, I can drag us over now. This also tells us we're the ones who've been drifting. And there's something else. Karsa asked, what? Torvald had begun pulling the raft along, using Karsa's chains. He said, these ships all grounded during the battle. I think a lot of the hand-to-hand fighting was actually between ships, chest deep in water. Karsa asked, how do you know this? Torvald said, because there's bodies all around me, Karsa Orlong, against my shins, rolling about on the sands. It's an unpleasant feeling, let me tell you. No, thank you. I do not love that. It's like noodling.
You wouldn't go noodling?
Okay. Let me tell you why I wouldn't go noodling. When I was in the second grade, I went to visit my Uncle Jerry in Oklahoma. All right. And
Okay.
Uncle Jerry is a real character. He had a 45 6-shooter on his belt. And within 20 minutes of us getting to this property, he shot a snake out of a tree.
Okay.
He had a pond. It was maybe 100 yards from the house. And there were some fish in there. He taught us to fish and catching the fish, putting them in a basket in the water. We had left him in there, go inside for lunch, come back out and take the basket out of the water. And there's a hole chomped in it. There's a half-eaten fish in there. There were snapping turtles in this pond.
All right.
One of them had snapped the metal wire of this little cage open.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Then later on that trip, one of these snapping turtles was in the garage and he poked at it with a stick and it latched onto it. And he picked the whole turtle up with the stick and carried it out to the pond. And it just hung on the whole time. And I was thinking, this thing could bite your fingers off. And this wasn't just a normal snapping turtle. It wasn't an alligator snapping turtle. And you've seen alligator snapping turtles, 100 pounds. They're ancient things. You stick your hand down in there and it just happens to be near one of these things, you're losing a finger.
You sound like a very risk-averse type of person. There's no sense of adventure there? You wouldn't want to just like...
Yeah, I like my fingers. No. It's like these biologists in South America, they take their shoes off, they roll their pants up, and they go out in this field that's got water in it, maybe 3 feet deep, and they're feeling around with their feet. They're like, okay, there's an anaconda. Yeah, and then they're like, reach down, and then they pick it up by the head, and then they like, oh, look, this one's about 13 feet. No. No. I've seen these things eat tapers. You're not convincing me this is a good idea. You're telling me you would go noodling?
I've seen some YouTube channels of people noodling. The actual act of it, I don't know, when you don't know
Can we
what's
back up?
underneath there.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We should probably define noodling. I realize this now. For people that aren't in the United States, do you just want to tell them what noodling is real quick?
Okay, I guess that's a fair point. So I guess noodling, to the best of my understanding, is people set these boxes into certain types of bodies of water, lake or rivers or whatever. And I guess catfish, maybe even other types of fish, but I think normally catfish like to have these little kind of cubby holes. They feel protected, I guess. So they go down there with a stick or their feet or their hand or whatever, and they feel around if there's a fish inside of there. They sort of block the entrance, and then they basically ram their arm into the hole to try and get the fish to bite their hand or arm, and then basically latch onto their mouth or through their gills and pull them out and catch them with their arm. So if you're doing that and you get a smallish catfish, I guess it's no big deal, but I have seen people pull out some pretty heavy catfish, 40 pounds, 50 pounds. They're pure muscle. When you pull them out and they're twisting around, I've seen their arms because I think their mouths are like sandpaper. So they end up with just like all the outside flesh is like ripped and probably doesn't feel great. But when they're heavy enough and big enough and you're underwater with them trying to pull them out and they've got your arm, I could see that being a little terrifying if it's a little stronger than what you anticipated. But I'd be up for it at least once, maybe. I feel like I'd like to try it.
Okay.
Go ahead. You're not going to be there with me?
I'll film you doing it.
Okay.
The stuff that I've seen, they're in some muddy creek and they're in the water up to their neck, and they're reaching down into not something they created, just random holes that they know that are down there and pulling it out. So it's not something that they've facilitated. They are out hunting in grottos or things that they know, little depressions where fish would collect and feeling around. The bank is hanging over a little bit, and then there's some tree roots and the water has eroded under it, and they go down in there and feel around, that type of stuff. I don't love snakes, and the creeks around here, there's a lot of snakes in them too. Water moccasins. It's not my scene. I've talked about swamps and rainforests not being where I want to be. I'll deal with scorpions. I'll deal with spiders. I don't want to have anything to do with this. Put me in the desert. Maybe this is like the blood memories telling me I need to be in the desert, you know? And I don't know.
I think you're right. You know, it's funny with this talk how water has a way of unsettling people, whether that's, I guess, an ocean, a lake, a river. When you can't see what's going on, what's clearly under there, and your imagination has a real way of completely running wild.
Are you saying that I have thalassophobia?
You may, but I may as well, because I've had these similar feelings. I've dove down into a lake before, and I thought that I was getting to the bottom, but it was actually really tall grasses that had grown up. And so then once you're like kind of in the grass and all of the things are like touching you, it's like, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? This lake wasn't that deep, but I can't remember what it's called. There's a line between warmer water and colder water. What is it? I actually need to look that up real quick.
Let's see how I edit this.
The thermocline layer.
Yes.
So it's actually visible to a slight degree. As I dove through that, my arm went through, and it was just like I'm putting my hand in from cold water into an icebox. Like you can actually feel it go up your arm. And all those feelings together, I was like, yeah, I probably should just go back up to the surface now. Like, enough of this.
How deep was this?
I don't even think it was that deep. This lake was a man-made lake. This particular area, I don't know, 15 feet deep, 15 to 20 maybe, somewhere.
How did your ears feel? Did you equalize them and it wasn't hurting that much?
I don't think it was deep enough for anything. I don't recall any of that going on.
Okay. Would you go spelunking? Cave diving underwater?
No, that freaks me out. Because I do have like a slight bit of claustrophobia, and I do watch some of those videos on YouTube of people like doing cave diving, spelunking. That's a hard pass for me as well. No shot. No shot.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't think I was claustrophobic. I had an MRI done after my shoulder injury. I had to focus on my breathing, and I never opened my eyes throughout the whole process. Karsa said, "Pull one up. Let us see these combatants." Torvald said, "All in good time, Teblor. We're almost there. Also, these bodies, they're rather soft. We might find something more recognizable if there's any on the ship itself. Here." There was a bump, and Torvald said, "We're alongside. A moment while I climb aboard."
I like the difference here between Karsa and Torvald, where Karsa's used to this kind of stuff, death and all that. He's like, yeah, just pull one right out of the water. Let's see what this is. And Torvald's like, maybe let's pump the brakes a little bit on this one. Maybe I don't want to be pulling up a corpse that's been underwater for who knows how long.
Do you think Karsa would have pulled it up knowing that it's kind of rotting? Would that have bothered him at all?
That's what I think. I don't think it would have stopped him. I don't think he would have been bothered at all. I think he would have just lifted up, take a look, and if he recognized, great. If not, just chuck it back and keep moving. I don't think he would have been upset by that in one bit. I think Torvald might get a little squishy stomach or something. He might not have enjoyed that. Sounds like he's having a hard enough time with them brushing up against his ankles.
Yeah, for people that aren't used to seeing that kind of stuff on a regular basis, yeah, you're going to have a squishy stomach over that.
Yep.
Karsa listened to the Daru's grunts and gasps, the slipping scrabble of his bare feet, the rustle of chains, finally followed by a muted thud. Then silence. Karsa said, "Torvald Nam?" Nothing. The raft's end beyond Karsa's head bumped alongside the raider's hull, then began drifting along it. Cool water flowed across the surface, and Karsa recoiled at the contact, but could do nothing as it seeped beneath him. He shouted, "Torvald Nam!" His voice strangely echoed. No reply. Laughter rumbled from Karsa, a sound oddly disconnected from the Teblor's own will. In water that, had he been able to stand, would likely rise no higher than his hips, he would drown, assuming there would be time for that. What an ironic death that would be compared to the future he had envisioned for himself at the beginning of the book. Drowning attached to a piece of wood in water he could stand.
The ultimate insult. All the feats of strength and, the whirling, the dancing. Nobody could dance in the village like him. Nobody was as skilled. And then, yeah, you're drowning in a bathtub, essentially.
One day I will rule over all the Teblor. This I vow.
Yeah, exactly. ended by a couple of feet of water.
Perhaps Torvald Nam had been slain. It would be a bizarre battle if there had been no survivors, and even now, beyond his sight, the Teblor was being looked down upon, his fate hanging in the balance. The raft edged near the ship's prow. A scuffling sound, then, "Where? Oh!" Karsa said, "Torvald Nam?" Footsteps, half stumbling, moved alongside from the ship's deck. Torvald said, "Sorry, friend. I think I must have passed out. Were you laughing a moment ago?" Karsa said, "I was. What have you found?" Torvald said, "Not much. Yet. Bloodstains. Dried. Trails through it. This ship has been thoroughly stripped. Hood below, you're sinking." Karsa said, "And I do not think you will be able to do anything about it, Lowlander. Leave me to my fate. Take the water and my weapons." But Torvald had reappeared, rope in his hand, sliding down over the gunwale near the high prow and back into the water. Breathing hard, he fumbled with the rope for a moment before managing to slip it underneath the chains. He then drew it alongside and repeated the effort on the other side of the raft, a third time down near Karsa's left foot, then a fourth loop opposite. Karsa could feel the wet, heavy rope being dragged through the chains. He asked, "What are you doing?" Torvald made no reply. Still trailing the rope, he climbed back onto the ship. There was another long stretch of silence, then Karsa heard movement once more, and the rope slowly tautened. Torvald's head and shoulders moved into view. The Lowlander was deathly pale. He said, "Best I could do, friend. There may be some more settling, but hopefully not much. I will check on you in a little while. Don't worry, I won't let you drown. I'm going to do some exploring right now. The bastards couldn't have taken everything." He vanished from Karsa's line of sight. Karsa waited, racked with shivering as the sea slowly embraced him. The level had reached his ears, muting all sounds other than the turgid swirl of water. He watched the 4 lengths of rope slowly growing tighter above him. It was difficult to recall a time when his limbs had been free to move without restraint, when his raw, suppurating wrists had not known the implacable iron grip of shackles, when he had not felt deep in his withered body a vast weakness, a frailty, his blood flowing as thin as water. He closed his eyes and felt his mind falling away. Away. He thought, "Urigal, I stand before you once more, before these faces in the rock, before my gods." Urigal. Urigal said, "I see no Teblor standing before me. I see no warrior wading through his enemies, harvesting souls. I do not see the dead piled high on the ground, as numerous as a herd of Bedarin driven over a cliff. Where are my gifts? Who is this who claims to serve me?" Karsa thought, "Urigal, you are a bloodthirsty god." Urigal cut in, "A truth a Teblor warrior revels in." Karsa thought, "As I once did. But now, Urigal, I am no longer so sure." Urigal asked, "Who stands before us? Not a Teblor warrior, not a servant of mine." Karsa thought, "Urigal, what are these Bedarin you spoke of? What are these herds? Where among the lands of the Teblor?" I think it's interesting that we know the word Bedarin, but Karsa has no understanding of that word.
It makes you wonder if their range, their homeland, maybe was once much greater, or if they've migrated to the Lordaeron Plains and kind of stayed there.
Or maybe there's a different name for them among their people if they have seen them.
Oh, that could be. They've moved out of where Bedarin might have been in the past.
That's a good point, because Bedarin, as far as we know, they're kind of plains dwelling, so maybe this higher altitude would not serve as their normal environs.
Yeah, I don't know why Urigal would choose to remark on Bedarin.
Well, he sounds frustrated.
Yeah, definitely frustrated.
Torvald shouted, "Karsa!" Karsa flinched, opened his eyes. Torvald Nam, a burlap sap over one shoulder, was climbing back down. His feet made contact with the raft, pushing it a fraction deeper. Water stung the outside corners of Karsa's eyes. This is really close to going under. Yeah. It would take a lot of self-control to not have a full anxiety attack here after slowly sinking for such a long time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely torturous, right?
Yeah, once it's to your eyes, at that point, all you have really is your nose left, right?
Yeah.
You can maybe purse your lips, maybe do a little Robin Hood thing, breathe through a straw temporarily.
Yeah.
I know some people, they like to float in those saltwater tanks and the water's covering their ears and it's sensory deprivation stuff. But this is like, you have no control over anything. You're actually sinking. And it is literally just a slow torture of, am I just going to die slowly, drown slowly?
Yeah.
In water I could stand in.
Well, what's interesting is how he seems to have kind of relinquished hope, I guess. He's kind of accepted that fate. He said that a little bit earlier on. You keep slinking lower and lower. I don't think you'll be able to save me, Torvald. Just let me go. Take the water. He seems to have kind of given up at this point. But you're right. to your point of not panicking and not having anxiety, I think I would be thrashing around, chained or not. I would not love what's happening.
The sack made numerous clunking sounds as Torvald set it down and reached inside. He said, "Tools, Karsa, a shipwright's tools." He drew forth a chisel and an iron-capped mallet. Karsa felt his heart begin pounding hard in his chest. Torvald set the chisel against a chain link, then began hammering. A dozen swings, the concussions pealing loudly in the still, murky air. Then the chain snapped, its own weight swiftly dragging it through the iron ring of Karsa's right wrist shackle. Then, with a soft rustle, it was gone beneath the sea's surface. Agony lanced through his arm as he attempted to move it. Karsa grunted, even as consciousness slipped away. He awoke to the sounds of hammering down below his right foot and thundering waves of pain, through which he heard, dimly, Torvald's voice. "Heavy, Karsa. You'll need to do the impossible. You'll need to climb. That means rolling over, getting onto your hands and knees, standing, walking. Oh, Hood, you're right. I'll need to think of something else. No food anywhere on this damn ship." There was a loud crack, then the hiss of a chain falling away. Torvald said, "That's it. You're free. Don't worry. I've retied the ropes to the platform itself. You won't sink. Free. How's it feel? Never mind. I'll ask that a few days from now. Even so, you're free, Karsa. I promised, didn't I? Let it not be said that Torvald Nam doesn't hold to his... let it not be said that Torvald Nam isn't afraid of new beginnings." Karsa muttered, "Too many words." Torvald said, "Aye, far too many. Try moving at least." Karsa said, "I am." Torvald instructed, "Bend your right arm." Karsa said, "I am trying." Torvald said, "Shall I do it for you?" Karsa said slowly, "Should I lose consciousness, do not cease, and do the same for the remaining limbs." He felt Torvald's hand grip his right arm, at the wrist and above the elbow. Then once again, mercifully, blackness swallowed him.
I guess this is what I was talking about before at the beginning of the chapter when we were mentioning Torvald's loyalty to Karsa. These feel like things that are a little bit more from a loyalist point of view, helping him bend his arms, retying the thing, just everything he can do to make sure that he's not going to drown and all that. I guess I like that from Torvald. He didn't have to do that.
Right.
But at the same time, I guess, to go back to the earlier point again, if he doesn't do it, he's on his own in the middle of this water, and that's not a good situation either.
Right.
But also months of being chained up and not being able to move, do anything. Even his little exercises that he was talking about when he was in the wagon, tensing his muscles to try and keep them from getting too stiff or whatever. I guess that didn't help much at all in this situation. This has just got to be so painful.
Mm-hmm. Even getting up in the morning now, everything hurts all over.
Yeah.
Hips are all tight. And I'm only 44. Imagine 10, 15, 20 years from now what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty rough. Additionally, I think a lot of us maybe can sympathize with Karsa because since the advent of cell phones, people's bathroom breaks have been getting longer and longer. And I'm sure some people have sat on the toilet for far too long, distracted, and then they stand up and now their limbs don't work. And they're like, the pain of a limb coming back to you.
Sharp tingling in your toes all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yes.
This is 10 times worse.
When Karsa came to once more, bundles of sodden cloth had been propped beneath his head, and he was lying on his side, limbs curled. There was dull pain in every muscle, every joint, yet it seemed strangely remote. He slowly lifted his head. He was still on the platform. The ropes that held it to the ship's prow had prevented it from sinking further. Torvald Nam was nowhere in sight. Karsa whispered, "I call upon the blood of the Teblor. All that is within me must be used now to heal, to gift me strength. I am freed. I did not surrender. The warrior remains. He remains." He tried to move his arms. Throbs of pain, sharp, but bearable. He shifted his legs, gasped at the agony flaring in his hips. A moment of lightheadedness, threatening oblivion once again. Then that passed. He tried to push himself to his hands and knees. Every minuscule shift was torture, but he refused to surrender to it. Sweat streamed down his limbs. Waves of trembling washed through him. Eyes squeezed shut, he struggled on. He had no idea how much time had passed, but then he was sitting, the realization arriving with a shock. He was sitting, his full weight on his haunches, and the pain was fading. He lifted his arms, surprised and a little frightened by their looseness, horrified by their thinness. His force of will is pretty impressive. I can't imagine what it would take to push through this after feeling all that pain, and every movement is causing pain, but still able to get to a sitting position.
Yeah, I would imagine people who go through something similar, that level of despair, you've kind of given up. You see the condition of your body. You feel how everything hurts. So you just say, just lay down and give up. But his spirit still remains strong, even though he's had these little, I guess, temporary lapses, we'll say, of mental weakness. But now that he's free, I guess he's starting to feel empowered again a little bit.
Yeah, let's see, now that he has agency once again, what he does with the lessons that he learned.
Yeah, okay.
As he rested, he looked about. The shattered ships remained, detritus clumped in makeshift rafts between them. Tattered sails hung in shrouds from the few remaining masts. The prow looming beside him held panels crowded with carvings, figures locked in battle. The figures were long-limbed, standing on versions of ships closely resembling the raiders on all sides. Yet the enemy in these reliefs were not, it seemed, the ones the ship's owners had faced here, for the craft they rode in were, if anything, smaller and lower than the raiders. The warriors looked much like Teblor, thick-limbed, heavily muscled, though in stature shorter than their foes.
Do we know who these warriors might be? Thick-limbed, heavily muscled, and all that? Do we have an idea?
Let's come back to that at the end of this episode.
Okay.
There will be something that we can talk about there.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're verging on spoiler territory.
All right.
And I wouldn't want to have to edit anything.
Oh, goodness. Fair enough.
Movement in the water. A gleaming black hump, spike-finned, rising into view, then vanishing again. All at once, more appeared, and the surface of the water between the ships was suddenly aswirl. There was life in the sea after all, and it had come to feed. Do you know what that sound is, Highness? Those are the shrieking eels! I got a picture of that water thrashing about from the Princess Bride a little bit. I know these aren't making any noise, but very similar feeling, I think. You know, that terror of these massive creatures are approaching very quickly, and we need to get out of this water.
Well, you have a great reference there with like Fezzik, Andre the Giant, and Karsa the Teblor, and then Facini and Torvald, kind of the big and the small.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're on boats in the water.
No, that's a good one. I like that.
You know, it's funny. When we both went to the Audi Academy in Arizona after we graduated from technical school, and you remember Herr Butler?
Yeah.
He always reminded me of, was Vicini the leader in Princess Bride? Yeah. So the actor that played Vicini, Butler, always reminded me of him. So I always just kind of associated those two together somehow.
I mean, it's a pretty close reference. He was shorter. I think he had the same kind of bald, hairstyle.
He had the same balding pattern.
Yeah.
The smile was very similar. Yeah. Funny guy.
Yeah. Good stuff.
The platform lurched beneath Karsa, throwing him off balance. His left arm shot out to take his weight as he began toppling. A jarring impact, excruciating pain, but the arm held. He saw a bloated corpse roll up into view alongside the raft. Then a black shape, a broad, toothless mouth, gaping wide, sweeping up and around the corpse, swallowing it whole. A small gray eye behind a spiny whisker flashed into sight as the huge fish swept past. The eye swiveled to track him, then the creature was gone. Karsa had not seen enough of the corpse to judge whether it was a match to him in size, or to Torvald Nam, but the fish could have taken Karsa as easily as it had the corpse. He needed to stand, then to climb. And as he watched another massive black shape break the surface alongside another ship, a shape almost as long as the ship itself, he would have to do it quickly. These creatures are as long as the ships themselves? I did a little research. The largest Wells catfish ever recorded was 9 feet in length, but it was only about 260 or so pounds.
Okay.
There's also a record of a nearly 650-pound catfish caught in Thailand, but it looks to be a much shorter. I think it was probably about 6 or 7 feet. How long do you think these boats are? Like 14 feet at a minimum?
I am not that familiar in watercraft, but I would have to think that sounds pretty accurate, 15 being the minimum. How long is like a canoe? Like I think a canoe can be 10 feet long pretty easily.
Later, we're going to find out roughly the size of these. They can fit like 20 people. Maybe. Well, those were the dories of the bigger ships.
So it might have to be even bigger. Like, I mean, maybe in the neighborhood of like 30, 40 plus feet if it can hold that many people.
That's crazy. I think of like a Viking ship, roughly. And how many would those fit? Well, those were pretty big too, right?
Yeah. So like a Viking longship, they say typically between 20 and 30 meters. This is about 65 to 98 feet long in historical examples. So that would carry 60 men.
I'm thinking anywhere from 14 to 60 feet. which is a wide range,
That
but
is a pretty wide range, yeah.
let's say even 14 to 20 feet. That's still a scary length for a fish.
Yeah.
And also, if it could swallow Karsa whole, the mouth would have to be pretty big on this thing. It's like Jaws.
Yeah. Like a big, great white shark. Because, I mean, a blue whale is like almost 80 feet long. And that's the biggest ocean mammal.
Creature on Earth, isn't it?
Yeah, biggest creature on Earth, I think. That's a big, massive fish in water that's not that deep, too. Like, it's a big fish.
Yeah, it's a catfish. So they're kind of low profile.
Dang. I mean, it's terrifying. You see something like that. You see something the size of Jaws, 15, 20 foot long giant fish in the water. That's terrifying. And it's swallowing things as big as you.
He heard footsteps from above. Then Torvald Nam was at the gunwale beside the prow. He said, "We've got to... Oh, Beru bless you, Karsa. Can you stand up? You've no choice. These catfish are bigger than sharks and likely just as nasty. There's one, just rolled up behind you. It's circling. It knows you're there. Stand up. Use the ropes." Nodding, Karsa reached up for the nearest stretch of rope. An explosion of water behind him. The platform shuddered, wood splintering. Torvald screamed a warning, and Karsa knew without looking back over his shoulder that one of the creatures had just risen up, had just thrown itself bodily onto the raft, splitting it in two. The rope was in his hand. He gripped hard as the sloshing surface beneath him seemed to vanish. A flood of water around his legs, rising to his hips. Karsa closed his other hand on the same rope. He shouted, "Urgal! Witness!" and drew his legs from the foaming water, then, hand over hand, climbed upward. The rope swung free of the platform's fragments, threw him against the ship's hull. He grunted at the impact, yet would not let go. Torvald shouted, "Karsa, your legs!" Karsa looked down, saw nothing but a massive mouth, opening impossibly wide, rising up beneath him. Hands closed on his wrists. Screaming at the pain in his shoulders and hips, Karsa pulled himself upward in a single, desperate surge. The mouth snapped shut in a spray of milky water. Knees cracking against the gunwale, Karsa scrambled wildly for a moment, then managed to shift his weight over the rail, drawing his legs behind him to sprawl with a heavy thump on the deck. Torvald's shrieks continued unabated, forcing Karsa to roll over to see the Daru fighting to hold on to what appeared to be some kind of harpoon. Torvald's shouts, barely comprehensible, seemed to be referring to a line. Karsa glanced about until he saw that the harpoon's butt end held a thin rope, which trailed down to a coiled pile almost within the Tevlor's reach. Groaning, he scrabbled towards it. He found the end, began dragging it towards the prow. He pulled himself up beside it, looped the line over and around, once, twice, then there was a loud curse from Torvald, and the coil began playing out. Karsa threw the line around one more time, then managed something like a half hitch. Given I just watched Jaws, I can't help but remember the scene where Quint shot the harpoon at the shark, and Hopper was tying the line on the floating barrel as the rope was playing out, and he did it just in time before the barrel took off. It's very reminiscent of that.
When I was seeing this and the rope starting to play, I was thinking of Deadliest Catch. And when they're throwing the crab pots over the side of the ship, occasionally somebody being careless and the rope is like really pulling out and the guys are like standing in the rope. They're kind of jumping to get their legs free real quick and everybody starts to panic. That's pretty terrifying. You can get tangled up in that and just get ripped right off the ship.
When the vessels are moving on the water, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
When I was working offshore, we had some equipment that was, 30 or 40,000 pounds that the crane would be lifting out, but you have to stabilize it. We would pull it up alongside the vessel, tie tag lines to it, and then we'd bring it up. We would have to be holding on to the tag lines where we'd loop them through stuff and like 4 or 5 guys on a line to keep it from swinging one direction and then other guys on the other side to try and keep it from swinging the other direction and pulling you in. And it's super dangerous. It's pretty scary. And that's not even really that bad of seas. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 foot swells, but that thing gets moving enough and you have to, all right, go put it back in the water, stop the swinging. Let's try again. It's pretty sketchy.
I don't know if that's something that a lot of people realize. Even in my work, I operate a crane for my job, and some of these things are maybe 8 or 9 tons. And if it does swing a bit, and our cranes don't move that fast, and we don't have waves that are like creating a lot of unusual movements, but people will still try and reach up and hold these things or like stop them from swinging. It's like, what are you, 160 pounds, 180 pounds? You're not stopping 10 tons from swinging. Just relax. Let the crane do some of the work because it's easy. It's really easy to get injured with these things moving around like that. Like you say, 30,000 pounds or something. Is that what you said?
That piece of equipment I'm thinking of specifically, yeah. It was like 20 feet tall. Imagine just like a big frame that was 5 feet deep, 12, 14 feet wide, had a bunch of valves stacked up in it. That's what we would put on top of the oil wells to do interventions. It's kind of like the piece of equipment that failed when they were doing the Deepwater Horizon stuff. You think the stuff that sits right on top of the well. That case was a little bit different because it was an oil rig. That equipment was a little bit higher up, but this would sit just directly on top of the well, latch on, and then it gives you more valves to control. So you could open up the well, but you're still controlling the pressure through these valves.
I see. Okay.
Carson did not expect the thin rope to hold. He ducked down beneath it as the last of the coil was snatched from his hands, thrumming taut. The galley creaked, the prow visibly bending. Then the ship lurched into motion, shuddering as it was dragged along the sandy bottom. Torvald scrambled up beside Karsa. He gasped, "Gods below! I didn't think. Let's hope it holds. If it does, we won't go hungry for a long while. No, not a long while." He slapped Karsa on the back, then pulled himself up to the prow. His wild grin vanished, and he said, "Oh." Karsa rose. The harpoon's end was visible directly ahead, cutting a V through the choppy waves, heading directly for one of the larger three-masted ships. The grinding sound suddenly ceased beneath the raider, and the craft surged forward. It's really impressive that this thing is able to drag this vessel along even though it was dragging on the bottom.
Yeah, and I guess if we remember, if we're right in our guesses, that these fish are 14 to 60 feet.
Say 20 feet, 20 to 25 feet. I'm not going to go 60. I don't want to think about something that big.
We'll say minimum of 20 feet at least. And pure muscle, that's an incredible amount of power to pull that, like you said, dragging along the bottom.
I had a flash when Torvald was saying that they wouldn't go hungry for a while. It reminded me of Waterworld when he caught that big fish.
Oh, yeah.
They ended up cooking it. It's almost like something that size.
Yeah.
Because that swallowed him whole, and then he used the harpoons to shoot it from inside.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I forgot about that.
Torvald shouted, "To the stern, Karsa! To the stern!" He made a brief effort to drag Karsa, then gave up with a curse, running full tilt for the galley's stern. Weaving, fighting waves of blackness, Karsa staggered after the Daru. He asked, "Could you not have speared a smaller one?" The impact sent them both sprawling. A terrible splitting sound reverberated down the galley's spine, and all at once there was water everywhere, foaming up from the hatches, sweeping in from the sides. Planks from the hull on both sides parted like groping fingers. Karsa found himself thrashing about in waist-deep water. Something like a deck remained beneath him, and he managed to struggle upright. And, bobbing wildly, directly in front of him, was his original blood sword. He snatched at it, felt his hand close about the familiar grip. Exultation soared through him, and he loosed an Urid war cry.
I get an image of Karsa going Super Saiyan, lightning around him. Rah! Just
yeah, and all his muscles start just regenerating, and his veins popping out. Yeah. Instantly revitalized.
Yeah, I like it.
Torvald sloshed into view beside him. He said, "If that didn't freeze that fish's tiny heart, nothing will. Come on, we need to get out onto that other damn ship. There's more of those bastards closing in all around us." They struggled forward. The ship they had broadsided had been leaning in the other direction. The galley had plunged into its hull, creating a massive hole before itself shattering, the prow with its harpoon line snapping off and vanishing within the ship's lower decks. It was clear that the huge ship was solidly grounded, nor had the collision dislodged it. As they neared the gaping hole, they could hear wild thrashing from somewhere within, deep in the hold. In disbelief, Torvald muttered, "Hood, take me! That thing went through the hull first. Well, at least we're not fighting a creature gifted with genius. It's trapped down there, is my guess. We should go hunting." Karsa growled, "Leave that to me." Torvald said, You can barely stand." Karsa said, "Even so, I will kill it." Torvald asked, "Well, can't I watch?" Karsa said, "If you insist." There were 3 decks within the ship's hull, insofar as they could see, the bottom one comprising the hold itself. The other 2 scaled to suit tall lowlanders. The hull had been half filled with cargo, which was now tumbling out in the backwash, bundles, bales, and casks. Karsa plunged into waist-deep water, making for the thrashing sounds deeper within. He found the huge fish writhing on the second level, in sloshing, foaming water that barely covered the Teblor's ankles. Spears of splintered wood jutted from the fish's enormous head, blood streaming out to stain the foam pink. It had rolled onto its side, revealing a smooth, silvery underbelly. Clambering across to the creature, Karsa drove his sword into its abdomen. The huge tail twisted round, struck him with the strength of a destrier's kick. He was suddenly in the air, then the curved wall of the thick hull struck his back. Stunned by the impact, the Teblor slumped in the swirling water. He blinked the drops from his eyes, then, unmoving in the gloom, watched the fish's death throes. Torvald climbed into view and said, "You're still damn fast, Karsa. Left me behind. But I see you've done the deed. There's food among these supplies. But Karsa heard no more, as unconsciousness took him once again.
This section went from 0 to 100. At first, Karsa's nearly giving up. He's about to drown, can't move his limbs, nearly getting eaten by a fish, harpooning it, getting dragged, crashing into a ship, killing the fish. I mean, this escalated quickly.
Yeah, that really got out of hand, didn't it? Karsa killed a fish.
I saw that.
He awoke to the stench of putrefying flesh that hung heavy in the still air. In the half-light, he could just make out the body of the dead fish opposite him. Its belly slit open, a pallid corpse partially tumbled out. There was the distant sound of movement somewhere above him. Would you eat an animal that feeds on humanoids like that? Seems like the meat quality would be suspect. Or is that a privileged viewpoint?
I think of something like catfish, eels, crabs. You would likely never know what it had eaten prior. But if we're talking about eating apex predators, I'm not sure if a catfish counts as an apex predator.
It's no hippo for sure.
Yeah. But if we're talking about eating predators that might have eaten humanoids, I guess it has been done. People eat bears and wolves and things. From what I understand, there's a larger risk of parasites when eating predators. But to your point about it being privileged, maybe. But I think the problem is if you knew that whatever the animal was had just consumed humanoid, that would be quite problematic for me. Mm-hmm. Especially in this case, you know what it's feeding on, and now you know he's opened the belly and a humanoid spills out. Eating that fish, after seeing that, I would be unlikely to want to partake.
If there was no food in here, I guess desperation would set in, and you have no choice.
That's a good point. Well, when you think of what was the movie Alive, based on real scenarios, desperation drives people to do what they have to do, and you resort to cannibalism. This isn't cannibalism, but at least eating a fish that has consumed another person, you know, I guess you do what you have to.
You brought up a really good point with lobsters, shrimp, crabs, delicacies, but they're eating dead animals on the bottom of the ocean a lot of times. So what are we talking about here? I guess it depends on what they're eating. These are eating, I guess they're eating anything they can get their hands on. And then I think with crabs and stuff, I guess there's such a variety of what they could be eating. I just don't associate it with them eating something that is itself a predator in a lot of cases. It's a whale that went to the bottom of the ocean, or a piece of a fish or something. But I guess that fish could be carnivorous, or it could eat human waste. I've heard of fish eating human waste too. And then, you know, you don't want to eat that fish. I guess that'd be like a gross idea. Its nutrients are coming from waste products.
Give me no nutrients. Well, there's something I had read about scavengers, like lobster, crab, shrimp, catfish even. Their digestive system is just different. Once things have passed through them and then it gets turned into meat, flesh, whatever, the way that they handle that type of stuff, whether it's parasites or whatever it is that they're eating, it's my understanding that it has a different way of processing them. So the meat isn't as tainted. Maybe not in the most extreme cases, but...
Not like a vulture or something?
I don't know. Would you eat a vulture? That's another one. I don't know. Yeah, maybe...
No. Absolutely
maybe I wouldn't want to eat
not.
a vulture either.
No, I'd rather die than eat a vulture.
Okay. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
That actually is an interesting tangent of like different religions prohibiting eating different foods because of parasites. I think is like the basic principle behind it in many cases, right?
Yeah, unclean meat.
Well beyond the fish and to the right, steep steps were visible, leading upward. Fighting to keep from gagging, Karsa collected his sword and began crawling towards the stairs. He eventually emerged onto the midship's deck. Its sorcery-scarred surface was sharply canted, sufficient to make traverse difficult. Supplies had been collected and were piled against the downside railing, where ropes trailed over the side. Pausing near the hatch to regain his breath, Karsa looked around for Torvald Nam, but the Daru was nowhere in sight. Magic had ripped deep gouges across the deck. There were no bodies visible anywhere, no indications of the nature of the ship's owners. The black wood, which seemed to emanate darkness, was of a species Karsa did not recognize, and it was devoid of any ornamentation, evoking pragmatic simplicity. He found himself strangely comforted. Torvald Nam clambered into view from the downside rail. He had managed to remove the chains attached to his shackles, leaving only the black iron bands on wrists and ankles. He was breathing hard. Karsa pushed himself upright, leaning on the sword's point for support. Torvald exclaimed, "Ah, my giant friend, with us once more!" Karsa grumbled, "You must find my weakness frustrating." This, coming from Karsa, is interesting. For an individual that values strength above virtually all other things, for him to admit his weakness is a bit shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Further indication that he is a changed individual.
True. It does seem out of character for him to admit weakness or to even think of how his weakness would affect somebody else in his presence. I think you're right. There are some changes happening.
Moving among the supplies, Torvald said, "To be expected, all things considered. I've found food. Come and eat, Karsa, while I tell you of my discoveries." The Teblar slowly made his way down the sloping deck. Torvald drew out a brick-shaped loaf of dark bread and said, "I found a dory, and oars to go along with the sail, so we won't remain victims to this endless calm. We've water for a week and a half, if we're sparing, and we won't go hungry no matter how fast your appetite comes back." Karsa took the bread from the Daru's hand and began tearing off small chunks. His teeth felt slightly loose, and he was not confident of attempting anything beyond gentle chewing. The bread was rich and moist, filled with morsels of sweet fruit and tasting of honey. His first swallow left him struggling to keep it down. Torvald handed him a skin filled with water, then resumed his monologue. "The dory's got benches, enough for 20 or so, spacious for lowlanders, but will need to knock one loose to give your legs some room. If you lean over the gunwale, you can see it for yourself. I've been busy loading what we'll need. We could explore some of the other ships if you like, though we've more than enough." Karsa said, "No need. Let us leave this place as quickly as possible."
I guess that points to how big these ships are, if we can extrapolate approximately 20 lowlanders.
What I was thinking was they were on a raider, and then that got pulled into this massive ship, the 3-masted ship.
Oh, this is the massive ship.
And then it has a dory for the people on the massive
Oh.
ship. So I don't know the relationship between the dory and the raider. I would have to think they're roughly the same size. Maybe the raider's a little
Okay.
bit bigger. But I think it's safe to say that if you can fit 20 people on here, let's say the bench is 3 or 4 wide on the dory, that's 5 rows. Still a pretty big ship.
Yeah. Okay.
Torvald's eyes narrowed on the Teblar for a moment. Then the Daru nodded and said, "Agreed. Karsa, you say you did not call upon that storm. Very well. I shall have to believe you, that you've no recollection of having done so, in any case. But I was wondering, this cult of yours, these 7 faces in the rock, or however they're called, do they claim a warren for themselves? A realm other than the one you and I live in, where they exist?" Karsa swallowed another mouthful of bread, then said, "I have heard nothing of these warrens you speak of, Torvald Nam. The 7 dwell in the rock, and in the dream world of the Teblar." Torvald said, "Dream world," then waved a hand and asked, "Does any of this look like that dream world, Karsa?" Karsa said, "No." Torvald asked, "What if it had been flooded?" Karsa scowled and said, "You remind me of Byroth Guild. Your words make no sense. The Teblar dream world is a place of no hills, where mosses and lichens cling to half-buried boulders, where snow makes low dunes sculpted by cold winds, where strange brown-haired beasts run in packs in the distance." Torvald asked, "Have you visited yourself, then?" Karsa shrugged and said, "These are descriptions given by the shamans." He hesitated and said, "The place I visited." He trailed off, then shook his head and went on. "Different. A place of colored mists." Torvald said, "Colored mists? And were your gods there?" Karsa said, "You are not Teblar. I have no need to tell you more. I have spoken too much already." Torvald said, "Very well. I was just trying to determine where we are." Karsa said, "We are on a sea, and there is no land." Torvald said, "Well, yes, but which sea? Where's the sun? Why is there no night, no wind? Which direction shall we choose?" Karsa said, "It does not matter which direction, any direction," then rose from where he had been sitting on a bale. He continued, "I have eaten enough for now. Come, let us finish loading, and then leave." Torvald said, "As you say, Karsa."
This would cause some anxiety for me. Just setting off, no landmarks to help guide your decision. It kind of reminds me of a time I went backpacking with a friend in the Pacific Northwest when I was a younger man. No map, no directions.
I've never heard this story.
Oh.
How did you guys navigate?
Well, we were going backpacking. I think it was more of we thought we had the right map. And so we were following a road that was supposed to lead to a trailhead. But I think it was shortly after a storm. So there were some trees that had fallen over the road. So we weren't really able to get to where we thought we were supposed to be. Based on like some rough calculation, we thought we had gone far enough, but we hadn't. There wasn't the trailhead that we thought, but there seemed to be some sort of path. So we decided we would just go off on this path, to which there was no actual path, but we just kept going and going and going until it got night. And then it was dark, and we were like, we can't go back now. So then we ended up just camping on the side of a hill, pretty unprepared. I didn't have a proper sleeping bag. It got pretty cold because of the elevation. Essentially, we just waited until the morning and then doubled back, and we were able to find our way out because there was a kind of a stream nearby. So we just kind of followed the stream until we climbed up the hill and then found part of the road. We weren't in the same spot, but we did find the road and we were able to walk back to where we'd left the car.
Man, that sounds dangerous.
I mean, like I said, I was young. We were real stupid. This was up on Mount Hood, and I think there were regularly reports of people getting lost up there and dying because they got lost or hypothermia or fell off a cliff or something up there. So it's not always the safest. That was one of our more stupid endeavors.
Was that the time the bear was snuffling around outside the tent?
No. Snuffling. No, that was a different time. We knew exactly where we were then. Another fun camping story.
We'll save that one for another day. And then the repercussions of that when we went camping.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You had to pay for that.
I'll need to get prior authorization for telling that story.
We'll save that, yeah.
Separately, I like Karsa's take here. It truly doesn't matter which direction they go in at this point. They just need to pick up and go. They have a finite amount of resources. They cannot stay where they are. You would just sit and die there with indecision if you don't do anything.
Yeah, what's that phrase? Is that paralysis analysis? You just sit and think and think and think, and you just end up not doing anything.
There is a point to be made about not making a brash choice, but in this case, I think their best option is to do something rather than nothing, given they have no water. They have to move somewhere, and there's no navigational aids, so just have to take a chance.
No, you're right.
Karsa felt stronger with each passing day, lengthening his turns at the oars each time he took over from Torvald Nam. The sea was shallow, and more than once the dory ground up onto shoals, though fortunately these were of sand and so did little damage to the hull. They had seen nothing of the huge catfish, nor any other life in the water or in the sky, though the occasional piece of driftwood drifted past, devoid of bark or leaf. As Karsa's strength returned, their supply of food quickly dwindled, and though neither spoke of it, despair had become an invisible passenger, a third presence that silenced the Teblor and the Daru, that shackled them as had their captors of old, and the ghostly chains grew heavier. In the beginning, they had marked out days based on the balance of sleep and wakefulness, but the pattern soon collapsed as Karsa took to rowing through Torvald's periods of sleep in addition to relieving the weary Daru at other times. It became quickly evident that the Teblor required less rest, whilst Torvald seemed to need ever more. They were down to the last cask of water, which held only a third of its capacity. Karsa was at the oars, pulling the undersized sticks in broad, effortless sweeps through the murky swells. Torvald lay huddled beneath the sail, restless in his sleep. The ache was almost gone from Karsa's shoulders, though pain lingered in his hips and legs. He had fallen into a pattern of repetition, empty of thought, unaware of the passage of time, his only concern that of maintaining a straight course, as best as he could determine, given the lack of reference points. He had naught but the dory's own wake to direct him. And that is what would give me anxiety. Without landmarks, they could be going in circles.
That's a good point. I suppose even if you're trying to follow the wake and you had a slight drift, over enough time of oaring.
Yeah, it's just a different size circle. Yeah. And most people don't have equal balance across their bodies. So it would be really hard to tell if you were making just a really minute pull difference on one side versus the other. Maybe one side of his body is cramped more than the other or something, so you're pulling a little bit more weakly. It'd just be virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Torvald's eyes opened, bloodshot and red-rimmed. He had long ago lost his loquaciousness. Karsa suspected the man was sick. They'd not had a conversation in some time. The Daru slowly sat up, then stiffened. He said, "We've company," his voice cracking. Karsa shipped the oars and twisted round in his seat. A large, three-masted black ship was bearing down on them, twin banks of oars flashing dark over the milky water. Beyond it, on the horizon's very edge, ran a dark, straight line. Karsa collected his sword, then slowly stood. Torvald muttered, "That's the strangest coast I've ever seen. Would that we'd reached it without the company." Karsa said, "It's a wall, a straight wall, before which lies some kind of beach." Well, that sounds familiar.
Doesn't it? We're taken back to the prologue a little bit, it seems.
Yes, this is what I wanted to come back to with a guess as to what those boats were. One possibility is Troll in the prologue had taken issue with him and his other brethren conquering this realm. They had flooded the realm, and maybe the people that were fighting against them in this battle were the denizens from this realm originally.
Okay.
Whatever warriors they had, maybe they had some boats, and then as the waters rose, they got on the boats and they were fighting whoever these raiders were that Troll was a part of. That's one theory as to who they could be.
Okay.
So that also gives us a clue as to who could be on this ship as well.
You mean as far as possibly being the brethren of Troll?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see later in the chapter who it is.
Okay.
Karsa returned his gaze to the closing ship, then said, "It is like those that had been beset by the raiders." Torvald said, "So it is, only somewhat bigger. Flagship is my guess, though I see no flag." They could see figures now, crowding the high forecastle. Tall, though not as tall as Karsa, and much leaner. Torvald muttered, "Not human, Karsa. I do not think they will be friendly. Just a feeling, mind you. Still." Karsa said, "I have seen one of them before, half spilled out from the belly of the catfish." Torvald said, "That beach is rolling with the waves, Karsa. It's flotsam. Must be 2,000-3,000 paces of it. The wreckage of an entire world. As I suspected, this sea doesn't belong here." Karsa said, "Yet there are ships." Torvald said, "Aye, meaning they don't belong here either." Karsa shrugged his indifference to that observation. He asked, "Have you a weapon, Torvald Nam?" Torvald said, "A harpoon and a mallet." "You will not try to talk first?" Karsa said nothing. The twin banks of oars had lifted from the water and now hovered motionless over the waves as the huge ship slid towards them. The oars dipped suddenly, straight down, the water churning as the ship slowed, then came to a stop. All right, we're going to stop there, and we'll pick up the chapter where we left off next week. For standout moments, Torvald's trials in ensuring Karsa didn't die. He went through a lot, and I'd like to think it shows a lot about his character as well, but I suppose he could also be in it for simple survival's sake.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting relationship that they have, and so far it does seem pretty loyal. I like that.
The numerous signs that Karsa's imprisonment has deeply impacted him, telling Torvald that to leave him and drown, just take the water and go, and then admitting that he's weak, and that must be frustrating to Torvald. All signs pointing to potential shifts in his way he views the world, possibly, and himself in it.
Certainly the humbling, as you mentioned before. He's got a great arc when you see these little things getting sprinkled in. It's interesting to see how that's going to do some character building for him.
Yeah, and then that healthy fear of death that he has now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before, there was nothing.
It's a little bit like John Constantine. He's like, oh man, all these demons, I'm guaranteed to go to where these demons are that I put here. It's a very similar situation. It's like, okay, do I have to go here?
Yeah, very good point.
The slow building of tension as Karsa's raft sank deeper into the water and his lack of control over the situation.
Yeah, terrifying when you're there. And like you said, only your eyeballs and maybe your nose sticking up out of the water thinking this is it.
No, thank you. The strength of will Karsa displayed in getting himself into an upright position, that really impressed me, that he's able to push through that.
Well, it sounded like excruciating pain. I mean, he passed out a couple of times, from moving, but was able to keep going, push through it. Karsa also nearly being eaten by this enormous catfish. Almost got his legs. I mean, that would have been the end of his story. If the catfish would have got him, that would be an abrupt end.
Thus ended Karsa Orlong's life.
Yeah. Karsa finally being free of those chains, as you've been talking about. The many, many months of being chained up between his capture, all the way back, Silver Lake and all the travel to get here. Finally being free and getting hold of his blood sword and everything. Epic. Epic to see.
The Super Saiyan. Ah!
Yeah. A roar.
Finally, the mystery of who all these vessels belong to and why they're fighting each other. We have some clues of what could be going on here. We'll see about that in the future, but I do like the ambiguity of the situation, especially from Karsa's perspective, not knowing who they are, why they're coming here, whether they're hostile or not. It's a good mystery to keep you interested in moving forward, this adventure.
I wonder at Torvald's frame of mind right now, too, where he's weak, Karsa's weak, and they encounter a ship that seems to be manned, and he's asking Torvald, do you have any weapons? And I wonder if Torvald's like, yeah, I mean, I've got this harpoon, but like we've been on the verge of starvation for a long time. Like maybe he's thinking, let's not go straight for attack. But I guess there is no other option with Karsa.
If they don't look friendly, what are you going to do?
Yeah, true.
All right, great job today, Dane.
Good job.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Just that, as we've hinted at in some of the previous episodes, we're culminating into a really interesting crossroads, I think. I'm just really excited to get into this next section, see what happens on this ship, see what Karsa does, and I'm just looking forward to it.
I think that's the most exciting part of where we are right now. Karsa has not had any agency for the last good while. He's been imprisoned, and now that he's free, let's see what he can do in this new world that he's been introduced to.
Excellent point. It's not where he's from. He's completely out of water, shall we say.
And on that note, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
Lot of energy there.